Hey, I figured it out. Don't know how good this is going to be because I'm on my laptop, but I'm just going to try and find a place to put you all so that you can sort of see me without having a glare somewhere. And there's no one here, which is fine. But just wait a second. Seems to work. Hi, we have someone. Yay. How are you? Good. Oh, my dog. Yeah. Hearing noises, that's my dog. I'm just going to wait till 11 o'clock to start because obviously that's when the Hogwarts Express leaves. So if you don't know what this video is and you're confused or you've never seen my channel before, I was trying to do a Back to Hogwarts series. It worked, but didn't work. I managed to film them all, reading a chapter from each book, but for some strange reason the videos wouldn't upload. One of them did, but the other ones were having more difficulty and I don't understand why. And I would have had to re-edit them all again and I wouldn't have got these videos up in time. So I asked my subscribers and they want me to go live. So I'll be reading a chapter from each of the Harry Potter books, depicting Harry's journey that year through to Hogwarts. So that's my dog again. And I'll end on 19 years later. So I'll be doing books 1 and 2 first, then taking a break, then coming back and doing 3, 4, take a break, come back to 5 and 6, take a break and end with 19 years later. But I just want to wait till like 11 o'clock to do it because obviously that's when the Hogwarts Express leaves. So but I just wanted to come on just now just to is it warm? Like a little bit of a warm up just to see, even if people don't join, that's fine. And I've never gone live before, so this is weird. It's so weird. I've tried to put you in the best spot so there's not a lot of glare, but I'm just hoping it stays there because it's bouncing on a very thin edge right now. So I'm hoping my laptop just stays there. Also just now it's very awkward because I don't know what to say. Oh, I know I've been accepted. I'm a bit older, sadly, so I'm more like an alumni now, sadly. I'll never admit it, but I am. But if a letter did land on my door and said Hogwarts was real and you're going, I would happily go through school again. Just for that. I would happily go through school again. Not normal muggle school, wizard school. Oh. I think I'm getting a wee co-host. Come here. Come here then. Ugh. I have a co-host now. He's come to join us for story time, haven't you? You want to go back to Hogwarts? I know you can't come. I'll turn you into a teacup. Wait, you just sit there then. Good boy. Oh, God. This is why you can't co-host with me, Clive. Hey, good boy. Okay, you're going to sit on me. That's fine. You'd definitely be a Hufflepuff if you were allowed at Hogwarts, Clive. You wouldn't be with me. I know. How long have we got? We've got 6 minutes. I hope if you're at platform 9 3/4, you get on that train. Come on. You've got 6 minutes. And I'm going to get my... And actually, the chapter we are starting with is the journey to platform 9 3/4. So it's very appropriate. Oh my gosh. I've got 3 people. Hi, guys. If you've joined, I'm starting at 11 o'clock, bang on when the train leaves to go to Hogwarts with the first book. We're going to be reading chapter 6, The Journey to Platform 9 3/4. And then I'll be reading a chapter from Chamber of Secrets, and then I'll take a break, and I will come back with books 3 and 4, take a break, come back with books 5 and 6, take a break, and then read 19 Years Later and end it there. If you've never been on my channel before, hello, I'm Jay. It's nice to have you. This is the first time I've gone live, so I do apologize if I'm awkward. I don't know what to say. I decided to do a Back to Hogwarts series, but it kind of fell through. The videos weren't uploading. So I asked the subscribers on my channel like what they wanted me to do, because I know one video would work if they wanted me to upload that or go live and read these. So they want me to go live, which I'm probably going to regret in the back of my head, but we will see. If you're new and you like Harry Potter, then feel free to subscribe and check out my channel, because I have a lot more Harry Potter stuff on there. But also let us know where you're from, what house you're in, what's your favorite Wizarding World class, what's your least favorite Wizarding World class, your favorite teacher. Would you bring an owl, a cat, or a toad? Hopefully not Pettigrew. We got 5. Gosh. Is it 5 minutes? Yes. Oh no, 4 minutes. Hope you're all on the train. Getting comfy. I was going to say comfortable, and it came out wrong. Oh. Yeah, Clive, I know. I don't know how I'm going to read the book with you on my lap, but I'll figure it out. You need to help me read it, okay? I've never done this. Ooh. Three minutes. We're going back to Hogwarts. Woohoo! So excited. I was just, anyone here, if you're watching live now or later, like let me know how you're celebrating back to Hogwarts. Obviously, I'm doing this. Are you in London? Are you at the tour? Were you at the tour this weekend? Were you at Platform 9 3/4 shop? Were you going around London for Harry Potter filming locations? Because I've done that and it's actually quite fun. So just let me know. Oh. Again, just let me know any favorite Harry Potter characters too. Like let me know them as well, because we all have a favorite one. I'm celebrating by getting my trunk ready for my trip. Oh, cute. I know. I do have a Hogwarts trunk, but I don't have it just now, but I do have one with my initials on it that my partner gave me, which is really cute. But also packing your trunk's very fun. 2 minutes till we go back to Hogwarts. 2 minutes till the train leaves. 2 minutes. So exciting. Then I'll start reading the first chapter today. Yeah, I'm doing okay. I'm a bit tired today. But I was in too much pain last night to sleep, so I was up every hour. So a bit tired, but they'll probably have a coffee in the break and I'll be perked up a wee bit. 1 minute. 1 minute to go till we're back to Hogwarts. Here we go. Then we're going to start reading. Best YouTuber on Instagram. I don't think I'm the best YouTuber on Instagram. I try. That's all. I just post what I like and try. It's the best you can do is just try. Here we go. We've almost got 15 seconds till the train leaves. Here we go. Anything from Trolley? Chocolate Frog. A must. 5, 4, 3, 2. 11 o'clock. Woo! Let's go back to Hogwarts. The Hogwarts Express is leaving platform 9 3/4. And we are now going to read the journey to platform 9 3/4 from Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, or if you're from anywhere else, Sorcerer's Stone. So yeah, let's begin and read chapter 6. Harry's last month with the Dursleys wasn't fun. True, Dudley was now so scared of Harry he wouldn't stay in the same room, while Aunt Petunia and Uncle Vernon didn't shut Harry in his cupboard, force him to do anything, or shout at him. In fact, they didn't speak to him at all. Half terrified, half furious, he acted as though any chair with Harry in it was empty. Although this was an improvement in many ways, it did become a bit depressing after a while. Harry kept to his room with his new owl for company. He had decided to call her Hedwig, a name he found in a history of magic. His schoolbooks were very interesting. He lay on his bed reading late into the night, Hedwig swooping in and out of the open window as she pleased. It was lucky that Aunt Petunia didn't come into Hoover anymore, because Hedwig kept bringing in dead mice. Every night before he went to sleep, Harry ticked off another day on the piece of paper he pinned to the wall, counting down to September 1st. On the last day of August, he thought he'd better speak to his aunt and uncle about getting to King's Cross Station the next day. So he went down to the living room, where they were watching a quiz show on television. He cleared his throat to let them know he was there, and Dudley screamed and ran from the room. Uncle Vernon? Uncle Vernon grunted to show he was listening. I need to be at King's Cross tomorrow to go to Hogwarts. Uncle Vernon grunted again. Would it be all right if you gave me a lift? Grunt. Harry supposed that meant yes. Thank you. He was about to go back upstairs when Uncle Vernon actually spoke. Funny way to get to Wizard School, the train. Magic carpets got all punctures, have they? Harry didn't say anything. Where's this school anyway? I don't know, said Harry, realising this for the first time. He picked the ticket Hagrid had given him out of his pocket. I just take the train from platform 9 3/4 at 11 o'clock, he read. His aunt and uncle stared. Platform what? 9 3/4. Don't talk rubbish, said Uncle Vernon. There's no platform 9 3/4. It's on my ticket. Barking, said Uncle Vernon. Howling mad, the lot of them. You'll see. You just wait. All right. They'll take you to King's Cross. We're going to London tomorrow anyway. I wouldn't bother. Why are you going to London? Harry asked, trying to keep things friendly. Taking Dudley to the hospital, growled Uncle Vernon. Got to get that ruddy tail removed before he goes to Smeltings. Harry woke at 5 o'clock the next morning and was too excited and too nervous to go back to sleep. He got up and pulled on his jeans because he didn't want to walk into the station in his wizard's robes. He'd change on the train. He checked his Hogwarts list yet again to make sure he had everything he needed, so that Hedwig was safely shut in her cage, and then paced the room, waiting for the Dursleys to get up. 2 hours later, Harry's huge heavy trunk had been loaded into the Dursleys' car. Aunt Petunia had talked Dudley into sitting next to Harry, and they set off. They reached King's Cross at 10:30. Uncle Vernon dumped Harry's trunk onto a trolley and wheeled it into the station for him. Harry thought this was strangely kind until Uncle Vernon stopped dead, facing the platforms with a nasty grin on his face. Well, there you are, boy. Platform 9, platform 10. The platform should be here somewhere in the middle, but they don't seem to have built it yet, do they? He was quite right, of course. There was a big plastic number 9 over one platform, and a big plastic number 10 over the other one next to it, and in the middle, nothing at all. Have a good term, said Uncle Vernon with an even nastier smile. He left without another word. Harry turned and saw the Dursleys drive away. All 3 of them were laughing. Harry's mouth went rather dry. What on earth was he going to do? He was starting to attract a lot of funny looks because of Hedwig. He'd have to ask someone. He stopped a passing guard, but didn't dare mention platform 9 3/4. The guard never heard of Hogwarts, and when Harry couldn't even tell him what part of the country it was in, he started to get annoyed, as though Harry was being stupid on purpose. Getting desperate, he asked for the train that left at 11 o'clock, but the guard said there wasn't one. In the end, the guard strode away, muttering about time wasters. Harry was now trying hard not to panic. According to the large clock over the arrivals board, he had 10 minutes left to get onto the train to Hogwarts, and he had no idea how to do it. He was stranded in the middle of a station, with a trunk he could hardly lift, a pocket full of wizard money, and a large owl. Hagrid must have forgotten to tell him something he had to do, like tapping the 3rd brick on the left to get into Diagon Alley. He wondered if he should go get out his wand and start tapping the ticket box between platforms 9 and 10. At that moment, a group of people passed him, just behind him, and he caught a few words of what they were saying. Packed with muggles, of course. Harry swung round. The speaker was a plump woman who was talking to 4 boys, all with flaming red hair. Each of them was pushing a trunk like Harry's in front of him, and they had an owl. Heart hammering, Harry pushed his trolley after them. They stopped, so did he, just near enough to hear what they were saying. Now, what's the platform number? Said the boy's mother. 9 3/4, piped a small girl, also red-headed, who was holding her hand. Mum, can't I go? You're not old enough, Ginny. Now be quiet. All right, Percy, you go first. What looked like the oldest boy marched towards platforms 9 and 10. Harry watched, careful not to blink in case he missed it. But just as the boy reached the divide between the 2 platforms, a large crowd of tourists came swarming in front of him, and by the time the last rucksack had cleared away, the boy had vanished. Fred, you next, the plump woman said. I'm not Fred, I'm George, said the boy. Honestly, woman, you call yourself our mother. Can't you tell I'm George? Oh, sorry, George, dear. Only joking, I'm Fred, said the boy, and off he went. His twin called after him to hurry up. Hi, Brett. How are you? We just started reading the chapter 6 of Philosopher's Stone, or Sorcerer's Stone. His twin called after him to hurry up, and he must have done, because a second later, he'd gone. But how'd he done it? Now, the 3rd brother was walking briskly towards the ticket barrier. He was almost there, and then, quite suddenly, wasn't anywhere. There's nothing else for it. Excuse me, Harry said to the plump woman. Hello, dear, she said. First time at Hogwarts. Ron's new too. She pointed at the last and youngest of her sons. He was tall, thin, and gangly, with freckles, big hands and feet, and a long nose. Yes, said Harry. The thing is, I don't know how to get onto the platform, she said kindly, and Harry nodded. Not to worry, she said. All you have to do is walk straight up the barrier between platforms 9 and 10. Don't stop, And don't be scared you'll crash into it. That's very important. Best do it a bit of a run if you're nervous. Go on. Go now before Ron. Okay, said Harry. He pushed his trolley round and stared at the barrier. It looked very solid. He started to walk towards it. People jostled him on their way to the platforms 9 and 10. Harry walked more quickly. He was going to smash right into that ticket box, and then he'd be in trouble. Leaning forward on his trolley, he broke into a heavy run. The barrier was coming nearer and nearer. He wouldn't be able to stop. The trolley was out of control. He was a foot away. He closed his eyes, ready for the crash. It didn't come. He kept on running. He opened his eyes. A scarlet steam engine was waiting next to the platform, packed with people. A sign overhead said, Hogwarts Express, 11 o'clock. Harry looked behind him and saw a wrought iron archway where the ticket box had been, with the words Platform 9 3/4 on it. He'd done it. Smoke from the engine drifted over the heads of the chattering crowd, while cats of every colour wound here and there between their legs. Owls hooted to each other in a disgruntled sort of way over the babble and the scraping of heavy trunks. The first few carriages were already packed with students, some hanging out the window to talk to their families, some fighting over seats. Harry pushed his trolley off down the platform in a search for an empty seat. He passed a round-faced boy who was saying, Gran, I've lost my toad again. Oh, Neville, he heard the old lady sigh. A boy with dreadlocks was surrounded by a small crowd. Give us a look, Lee, go on. The boy lifted the lid of the box in his arms, and the people around him shrieked and yelled as something inside poked out a long, hairy leg. Harry pressed on through the crowd until he found an empty compartment near the end of the train. He put Hedwig inside first, and then started to shove and heave his trunk towards the train door. He tried to lift it up the steps, but could hardly raise one end, and twice he dropped it painfully onto his foot. Want a hand? It was one of the redhead twins he'd followed through the ticket box. Yes, please, Harry panted. Oi, Fred, come here and help. With the twins' help, Harry's trunk was at last tucked away in the corner of the compartment. Thanks, Harry said, pushing his sweaty hair out of his eyes. What's that? Said one of the twins suddenly, pointing at Harry's lightning scar. Blimey, said the other twin. Are you? He is, said the first twin. Aren't you? He added to Harry. What? Said Harry. Harry Potter, chorused the twins. Oh, him, said Harry. I mean, yes, I am. The two boys gawped at him, and Harry felt himself going red. Then, to his relief, a voice came floating in through the train's open door. Fred! George, are you there? Coming, ma'am. With a last look at Harry, the twins hopped off the train. Harry sat down next to the window where, half hidden, he could watch the redhead family on the platform and hear what they were saying. The mother had just taken out her handkerchief. Ron, you've got something on your nose. The youngest boy tried to jerk out the way, but she grabbed him and began rubbing the end of his nose. Mum, get off! He wrigged free. Has Icky Ronnie got some fickin' on his nose? Said one of the twins. Shut up, said Ron. Where's Percy? Said their mother. He's coming now. The oldest boy came striding into sight. He'd already changed into his billowing black Hogwarts robes, and Harry noticed a shiny silver badge on his chest with the letter P on it. Can't stay long, mother, he said. I'm up front. The prefects have got 2 compartments to themselves. Oh, are you a prefect, Percy? Said one of the twins with an air of great surprise. You should have said something. We had no idea. Hang on. I think I remember him saying something about it, said the other twin. Once, or twice, all summer. Oh, shut up, said Percy the prefect. How come Percy gets new robes anyway? Said one of the twins. Because he's a prefect, said their mother fondly. All right, dear, well, you have a good term. Send me an owl when you get there. She kissed Percy on the cheek and he left. Then she turned to the twins. Now, you two. This year you behave yourselves. If I get one more hour telling me you've blown up a toilet or blow up a toilet, we've never blown up a toilet. Great idea, though. Thanks, Mum. It's not funny. And look after Ron. Don't worry. Icky Runnykins is safe with us. Shut up, said Ron again. He was almost as tall as the twins already, and his nose was still pink where his mother had rubbed it. Hey, Mum, guess what? Guess who we just met on the train? Harry leant back quickly so they couldn't see him. You know that black-haired boy who was near us in the station? You know who he was? Who? Harry Potter. Harry heard the little girl's voice. Oh, Mum, can I go on the train and see him, Mum? Please? You've already seen him, Ginny. And the poor boy isn't something that you goggle at in a zoo. Is he really, Fred? How'd you know? I asked him. Saw a scar. It's really there, like lightning. Poor dear. No wonder he was all alone. I wondered, he was ever so polite when he asked how to get onto the platform. Never mind that. Do you think he remembers what you know who looks like? Their mother suddenly became very stern. I forbid you to ask him that, Fred. No, don't you dare. As though he needs reminding of that on his first day at school. All right, keep your ear on. A whistle sounded. Hurry up, their mother said, and the three boys clambered onto the train. They leant out of the window for her to kiss them goodbye, and their youngest sister began to cry. Don't worry, Ginny. We'll send you loads of owls. We'll send you a Hogwarts toilet seat. George! Only joking, Mum. The train began to move. Harry saw the boy's mother waving and their sister half laughing, half crying, running to keep up with the train until it gathered too much speed. Then she fell back and waved. Harry watched the girl and her mother disappear as the train rounded the corner. Houses flashed past the window. Harry felt a great leap of excitement. He didn't know what he was going to, but it had to be better than what he was leaving behind. The door of the compartment slid open and the youngest redhead boy came in. Anyone sitting there? He asked, pointing to the seat opposite Harry. Everywhere else is full. Harry shook his head and the boy sat down. He glanced at Harry, then looked quickly out the window, pretending he hadn't looked. Harry saw he still had black marks on his nose. Hey, Ron! The twins were back. Listen, we're going down to the middle of the train. Lee Jordan's got a giant tarantula down there. Right, Ron mumbled. Harry, said the other twin, do we introduce ourselves? Fred and George Weasley, and this is Ron, our brother. See you later then. Bye, said Harry and Ron. The twins slid the compartment door shut behind them. Are you really Harry Potter? Ron blurted out. Harry nodded. Oh, well, I thought it might be one of Fred and George's jokes, said Ron. And have you really got... You know... Pointed at Harry's forehead. Harry pulled back his fringe to show the lightning scar. Ron stared. So that's where you know who... Yes, said Harry, but I can't remember it. Nothing, said Ron eagerly. Well, I remember a lot of green light, but nothing else. Wow, said Ron. He sat and stared at Harry for a few moments. Then, as though he'd suddenly realised what he was doing, he looked quickly out of the window again. Are all your family wizards? Asked Harry, who found Ron just as interesting as Ron found him. Yes, I think so, said Ron. I think Mum's got a second cousin who's an accountant, but we never really talk about him. So you must know a lot of magic already. The Weasleys were clearly one of those old wizarding families the pale boy in Diagon Alley had talked about. I heard you went to live with muggles, said Ron. What are they like? Horrible. Well, not all of them. My aunt and uncle and cousin are, though. Wish I had 3 wizard brothers. 5, said Ron. For some reason, he was looking gloomy. I'm the 6th in our family to go to Hogwarts. You could say I've got a lot to live up to. Bill and Charlie had already left. Bill was head boy and Charlie was captain of Quidditch. Now Percy's a prefect. Fred and George mess around a lot, but they're really funny. Everyone expects me to do as well as the others, but if I do, it's no big deal because they done it first. Never get anything new either. We're 5 brothers. I've got Bill's old robes, Charlie's old wand, and Percy's old rat. Ron reached inside his jacket and pulled out a fat grey rat, which was sleeping. His name's Scabbers, and he's useless. Hardly ever wakes up. Percy got an hour from my dad for being made a prefect, but they could have... I got Scabbers instead. Ron's ears went pink. He seemed to think he said too much, because he went back to staring out the window. I didn't think there was anything wrong with not being able to afford an owl. After all, he'd never had any money in his life until a month ago, and he told Ron so, all about having to wear Dudley's old clothes, never getting any proper birthday presents. This seemed to cheer Ron up. And until Hagrid told me, I don't know anything about being a wizard, about my parents, or Voldemort. Ron gasped. What? Said Harry. You said you know whose name, said Ron, sounding both shocked and impressed. I'd have thought you, of all people. I'm not trying to be brave or anything, saying his name, said Harry. I just never knew you shouldn't. See what I mean? I've got loads to learn. I bet, he added, voicing for the first time something that had been worrying him a lot lately. I bet I'm the worst in my class. You won't be. There's loads of people who come from Muggle families and they learn quick enough. While they were talking, the train had carried them out of London. Now they were speeding past fields full of cows and sheep. They were quiet for a time, watching the fields and lanes flick past. Around 12:30, there was a great clattering outside in the corridor, and a smiling, dimpled woman slid back the door and said, Anything off the trolley, dears? Harry, who hadn't had any breakfast, leapt to his feet, but Ron's ears went pink again, and he muttered that he'd bought sandwiches. Harry went out into the corridor. He'd never had any money for sweets with the Dursleys, and now that he had pockets rattling with gold and silver, he was ready to buy as many Mars bars as he could carry. But the woman didn't have Mars bars. What she did have were Bertie Bott's every flavour beans, Drubal's best blowing gum, chocolate frogs, pumpkin pasties, cauldron cakes, licorice wands, and a number of other strange things Harry had never seen in his life. Not wanting to miss anything, he got some of everything and paid the woman 11 silver sickles and 7 bronze knuts. Ron stared as Harry brought it all back into the compartment and tipped it into an empty seat. Hungry, are you? Starving, said Harry, taking a large bite out of a pumpkin pasty. Ron had taken out a lumpy package and unwrapped it. There were 4 sandwiches in there. He pulled one of them apart and said, She always forgets I don't like corned beef. Swap you one of these, said Harry, holding up a pasty. Go on. You don't want this, it's all dry, said Ron. She hasn't got much time, he added quickly. You know, with 5 of us. Go on, have a pasty, said Harry, who had never had anything to share before, or indeed anyone to share it with. It was a nice feeling sitting there with Ron, eating their way through all of Harry's pasties and cakes. The sandwiches lay forgotten. What are these? Harry asked Ron, holding up a pack of chocolate frogs. They're not really frogs, are they? He was starting to feel that nothing would surprise him. No, said Ron. But see what the card is. I'm missing Agrippa. What? Oh, gosh, you wouldn't know. Chocolate frogs have cards inside them, you know, to collect. Famous witches and wizards. I've got about 500, but I haven't got Agrippa or Pottomley. Harry unwrapped his chocolate frog and picked up the card. It showed a man's face. He wore half-moon glasses, had a long crooked nose, and flowing silver hair, beard, and moustache. Underneath the picture was the name Albus Dumbledore. So this is Dumbledore, said Harry. Don't tell me you've never heard of Dumbledore, said Ron. Can I have the frog? Might get Agrippa. Thanks. Harry turned the card over and read, Albus Dumbledore, currently headmaster of Hogwarts, considered by many the greatest wizard of modern times. Dumbledore is particularly famous for his defeat of the Dark Wizard Grindelwald in 1945, for discovering the 12 uses of dragon's blood, and his work on alchemy with his partner Nicholas Flamel. Dumbledore also enjoys chamber music and 10-pin bowling. Harry turned the card back over and saw, to his astonishment, that Dumbledore's face had disappeared. He's gone! Well, you can't expect him to hang around all day, said Ron. He'll be back. No, I got Morgana again. I've got about 6 of her. Do you want it? You can start collecting. Ron's eyes strayed to the pile of chocolate frogs wanting to be unwrapped. Help yourself, said Harry. But in, the Muggle world, people just stay put in photos. Do they? What, they don't move at all? Ron sounded amazed. Weird. Harry stared as Dumbledore slid back into the picture on his card and gave him a small smile. Ron was more interested in eating the frogs than looking at the famous witch and wizards cards, but Harry couldn't keep his eyes off them. Soon he not only had Dumbledore and Morgana, but Hengist of Woodcroft, Albrecht Grunin, Sirius, Parselius, and Merlin. He finally tore his eyes away from the druidess Cleodana who was scratching her nose to open a bag of Bertie Bott's every flavoured beans. You want to be careful with those, Ron warned Harry. When they say every flavour, they mean every flavour. You get all the ordinary ones like chocolate, peppermint, marmalade. And then you get spinach and liver and tripe. George reckons he got a bogey flavoured one once. Ron picked up a green bean, looked at it carefully, and bit into a corner. Blah! See? Sprouts. They had a good time eating the Box Every flavoured beans. Harry got toast, coconut, baked bean, strawberry, curry, grass, coffee, sardine, was even brave enough to nibble at the end of a funny grey one Ron wouldn't touch, which turned out to be pepper. The countryside now flying past the window was becoming wilder. The neat fields had gone. Now they were woods, twisting rivers, and dark green hills. There was a knock on the door of their compartment, and the round-faced boy Hyde passed on platform 9 3/4 came in. He looked tearful. "Sorry," he said, "but have you seen a toad at all?" When they shook their heads, he wailed, "Oh, I've lost him. He keeps getting away from me." "He'll turn up," said Harry. "Yeah," said the boy miserably. "Well, if you see him." He left. "Don't know why you're so bothered," said Ron. "If I brought a toad, I'd lose it as quick as I could. Mind you, I brought Scabbers, so I can't talk." The rat was still snoozing on Ron's lap. "He might have died and you wouldn't know the difference," said Ron in disgust. "I tried to turn him yellow yesterday to make him more interesting, but the spell didn't work. I'll show you." He rummaged around in his trunk and pulled out a very battered-looking wand. "Hi, Danny." It was chipped in places, and something white was glinting at the end. "Unicorn hair's really poking out." Anyway, he just raised his wand when the compartment door slid open again. The toadless boy was back, but this time he had a girl with him. She was already wearing her new Hogwarts robes. "Has anyone seen a toad? Neville's lost one," she said. She had a bossy sort of voice, lots of bushy brown hair, and rather large front teeth. "We've already told him we haven't seen it," said Ron. But the girl wasn't listening. She was looking at the wand in his hand. "Oh, you doing magic? Let's see it then." She sat down. Ron looked taken aback. All right." He cleared his throat. "Sunshine, daisies, buttermellow, turn the stupid fat rat yellow." He waved his wand, but nothing happened. Scabbard stayed grey and fast asleep. "You sure that's a real spell?" said the girl. "Well, it's not very good, is it? I've tried a few simple spells just for practice, and it's all worked for me. Nobody in my family's magic at all. It was ever such a surprise when I got my letter, but I was ever so pleased, of course. I mean, it's the very best wizarding school out there, I've heard. I've learnt all our set books off by heart, of course. I just hope it would be enough. I'm Hermione Granger, by the way. Who are you?" She said this all very fast. Harry looked at Ron and was relieved to see by his stunned face that he hadn't learnt all the set of books off by heart either. "I'm Ron Weasley," Ron muttered. "Harry Potter," said Harry. "Are you really?" said Hermione. "I know all about you, of course. Got a few extra books for background reading, and your modern magical history and the rise and fall of the dark arts and great wizarding events of the 20th century." "Am I?" said Harry, feeling dazed. "Goodness, didn't you know? I'd have found out everything I could if it was me," said Hermione. "Do you know what house you'll be in? I've been asking around, and I hope I'm in Gryffindor. It sounds by far the best. I hear Dumbledore himself was one, but I suppose Ravenclaw wouldn't be too bad. Anyway, we better go and look for Neville's toad. You two better change. You know, I expect we'll be there soon." And she left, taking the toadless boy with her. "Whatever house I'm in, I hope she's not in," said Ron. He threw his wand back into his trunk. "Stupid spell. George gave it to me. Bet he knew it was a dud." "What houses are your brothers in?" asked Harry. "Gryffindor," said Ron. Gloom seemed to settle on him again. "Mum and Dad were in it too. I don't know what they'll say if I'm not. I don't suppose Ravenclaw would be too bad, but imagine if they put me in Slytherin." "That's the house you know who was in?" "Yeah," said Ron. He flopped back into his seat looking depressed. "You know, I think the ends of Scabbers' whiskers are a bit lighter," said Harry, trying to take Ron's mind off houses. "So what your older brothers do now they've left anyway?" Harry was wondering what a wizard did once he'd finished school. "Charlie's in Romania studying dragons, and Bill's in Africa doing something for Gringotts," said Ron. "Did you hear about Gringotts? It's been all over the Daily Prophet, but I don't suppose you get that with muggles. Someone tried to rob a high-security vault." Harry stared. "Really? What happened to them?" "Nothing. That's why it's such big news. They haven't been caught. My dad says it must be a powerful dark wizard to get round Gringotts, but they don't think they took anything. That's what's odd. Of course, everyone got scared when something like this happens, because in case you know who's behind it. Harry turned this news over in his mind. He was starting to get a prickle of fear every time you know who was mentioned. He supposed this is all part of entering the wizarding world, but I'd be a lot more comfortable saying Voldemort without worrying. What's your Quidditch team? Ron asked. I don't know any, Harry confessed. What? Said Ron, dumbfounded. Oh, you wait. It's the best game in the world. And he was off, explaining all about the 4 balls and the positions of the 7 players, describing famous games he'd been to with his brothers, and the broomstick he liked if he'd had the money. He was just taking Harry through the finer points of the game when the compartment door slid open yet again. But it wasn't Neville, the toadless boy, or Hermione Granger this time. 3 boys entered, and Harry recognised the middle one at once. It was the pale boy from Madame Malkin's robe shop. He was looking at Harry with a lot more interest than he'd shown back in Diagon Alley. Is it true? He said. It's saying all down the train that Harry Potter's in the compartment. So it's you, isn't it? Yes, said Harry. He was looking at the other boys. Both of them were thick-set and looked extremely mean. Standing either side of the pale boy, they looked like bodyguards. Oh, this is Crabbe and Goyle, said the pale boy carelessly, noticing where Harry was looking. And my name's Malfoy. Draco Malfoy. Ron gave a slight cough, which might have been hiding a snigger. Draco Malfoy looked at him. Think my name's funny, do you? No need to ask who you are. My father told me all the Weasleys have red hair, freckles, and more children than they can afford. He turned back to Harry. You'll soon find out that some Wizarding families are much better than others, Potter. You don't want to go making friends with the wrong sort. I can help you there. He held out his hand to shake Harry's. Harry didn't take it. I think I can tell who the wrong sort are for myself, thanks, he said coolly. Draco Malfoy didn't go red, but a pink tinge appeared in his pale cheeks. I'd be careful if I were you, Potter, he said slowly. Unless you're a bit politer, you'll go the same way as your parents. They didn't know what was good for them either. You hang around riffraff like the Weasleys and that Hagrid, and it'll rub off on you. Both Harry and Ron stood up. Ron's face was as red as his hair. Say that again, he said. Oh, you going to fight us? Are you? Malfoy sneered. Unless you get out now, said Harry, more brave than he felt, because Crabbe and Goyle were a lot bigger than him or Ron. But we don't feel like leaving, do we, boys? We've eaten all our food, and you still seem to have some. Goyle reached towards the chocolate frogs next to Ron. Ron leapt forward, but before he so much as touched Goyle, Goyle let out a horrible yell. Scabbers the rat was hanging off his finger. Sharp little teeth sunk deep into Goyle's knuckle. Crabbe and Malfoy backed away as Goyle swung Scabbers round and round, howling, and when Scabbers finally flew off and hit the window, all 3 of them disappeared at once. Perhaps they thought there were more rats lurking among the sweets, or perhaps they heard the footsteps because a second later Hermione Granger had come in. What has been going on? She said, looking at all the sweets all over the floor, and Ron picking Scabbers up by his tail. I think he's been knocked out, said Ron to Harry. He looked closer at Scabbers. No, I don't believe it. He's gone back to sleep. And so he had. You met Malfoy before? Harry explained about their meeting in Diagon Alley. I've heard of his family, said Ron darkly. They're some of the first to come back to our side after you-know-who disappeared. Said they'd been bewitched. My dad didn't believe it. He said Malfoy's father didn't need an excuse to go over to the dark side. Turned to Hermione. Can we help you with something? You better hurry up and put your robes on. I've just been up front to ask the driver and he says we're nearly there. You haven't been fighting, have you? You'll be in trouble before we get there. Scabbers have been fighting, not us, said Ron, scowling at her. Would you mind leaving while we change? All right. I only came in here because people outside are behaving very childishly, racing up and down the corridors, said Hermione in a snuffy voice. And you've got dirt on your nose, by the way. Did you know? Ron glared at her as she left. Harry peered out the window. It was getting darker. He could see mountains and forests under deep purple sky. The train did seem to be slowing down. He and Ron took off their jackets and pulled on their long black robes. Ron's were a bit short for him, but you could see his trainers underneath them. A voice echoed through the train. We'll be reaching Hogwarts in 5 minutes' time. Please leave your luggage on the train. It will be taken to the school separately. Harry's stomach lurched with nerves, and Ron, he saw, looked pale under his freckles. They crammed their pockets with the last of the sweets and joined the crowd through the corridor. The train slowed right down and finally stopped. People pushed their way towards the door and out onto a tiny, dark platform. Harry shivered in the cold night air. Then a lamp came bobbing over the heads of the students, and Harry heard a familiar voice. First years? First years over here? You're right there, Harry. Hagrid's big, hairy face beamed over the sea of heads. Come on, follow me. Any more first years? Mind your step now. First years, follow me. Slipping and stumbling, they followed Hagrid down what seemed to be a steep, narrow path. It was so dark either side of them, and that Harry thought there must be thick trees there. Nobody spoke much. Neville, the boy who kept losing his toad, sniffed once or twice. You'll get your first sight of Hogwarts in a sec, Hagrid called over his shoulder. Just round this bend, dear. There was a loud, ooh. The narrow path had opened suddenly onto the edge of a great black lake. Perched atop a high mountain on the other side, its windows sparkling in the starry sky, was a vast castle with many towers and turrets. No more than 4 a boat, called Hagrid, pointing to a fleet of little boats sitting in the water by the shore. Harry and Ron were followed into their boat by Neville and Hermione. Everyone in, shouted Hagrid, who had a boat to himself. Right then, forward! And the fleet of little boats moved off all at once, gliding across the lake, which was as smooth as glass. Everyone was silent, staring up at the great castle overhead. It towered over them as they sailed nearer and nearer to the cliff on which it stood. Heads down, yelled Hagrid, as the first boats reached the cliff. They all bent their heads, and the little boats carried them through a curtain of ivy, which hid a wide opening in the cliff face. They were carried along a dark tunnel, which seemed to be taking them right underneath the castle, until they reached a kind of underground harbour, where they clambered out onto the rocks and pebbles. Oi, you there! Is this your toad? Said Hagrid, who checking the boats as people climbed out of them. Trevor! Cried Neville, blissfully holding out his hands. Then he clambered up a passageway in the rock after Hagrid's lamp, coming out at last onto smooth, damp grass right in the shadow of the castle. They walked up the flight of stone steps and crowded around the huge oak front door. Everyone here? You there, still got your toad? Hagrid raised a gigantic fist and knocked 3 times on the castle door. So that was chapter 6 of Philosopher's Stone, or Sorcerer's Stone, depending where you're from. I know people have commented, it's just like sometimes when I'm trying to read and read comments on here, I'm like, where am I? So Ron is already smitten for Hermione. Yeah, it's probably love at first sight for them, to be fair, just in a very long-winded way. So, we've got 6 people. Hi. If you have only just joined us, I have just finished reading the chapter for Philosopher's Stone or Sorcerer's Stone, but this will probably go up on my YouTube anyway, so if you've missed it, you can already go back and watch it. Hi, guys. If you're not familiar with me, I'm Jay. It's nice to have you here. I'm reading chapters from the Harry Potter books about Harry's journey to Hogwarts that year for a celebration for Back to Hogwarts. I was supposed to do videos. They didn't work. And so I decided to go live. So we just finished Philosopher's Stone, just taking a little minute just to see how everyone's doing. If you want to leave which house you're in, then let me know. I'm a Ravenclaw, wrong bit, if you can't tell. I do also have a little co-host sleeping on my lap, so if you hear anything, it's this little guy. He came to join us just before it started, so if you hear any noise, it's him. This is Clive. Hufflepuff, yes. My sister, half my family are Ravenclaws and Hufflepuffs. It's no joke. Like, I'm a Ravenclaw, so's my dad and my gran. My sister, my mum, my aunt and my uncle are Hufflepuffs, and then my boyfriend is a Slytherin, and then so's my sister's fiance. He's a Slytherin, so there's like no Gryffindors anywhere. But I think if I was to get sorted again, I would probably be a Slytherin because I've hung around with my boyfriend too much. But I think Hufflepuff would be my next choice as well. Sorry, I was just getting messages as well, so I'm just going to double check them really quick. Also put where you're from. It'd be nice to know where everyone's watching from, because it's kind of cool. I always get people from all over, and it's insane how many people can find my channel. So I'm looking for chapter 5. I'm just going to get the next one ready. Reading Chamber of Secrets. If you know the book titles, take a guess which chapter we might be reading. Based on the fact that it's Harry's journey to Hogwarts that year, what chapter do you think we're reading? Georgia. Ooh, nice. The only places I've been in the United States are Chicago and Florida. Yes, Chicago and Florida. Because my uncle used to live in Chicago. They moved recently, so I have yet to visit them. They're in Nashville. I've yet to visit them now. So one day, hopefully. Okay. I'm going to have to move you, Clive. There we go. Oh, cool. My aunt and my uncle moved to Chicago like 18 years ago from Scotland. So they moved over there, and then they lived in, like I said, they lived in Chicago for like years. And my uncle's job involved him then moving to Nashville recently, but he seems to like it. I think they probably do miss Chicago, but getting ready. Are we all ready? Because after this, I'm going to cut the live. I'm going to have a 10-minute break, and then I'll come back and read books 3 and 4. If you're just joining, again, I know I'm going to repeat myself. I have just finished Philosopher's Stone. This video will go up on my channel, so you can go back and watch it if you would like. I'm just having people say where they're from, what Hogwarts house you're in, what's your favorite Harry Potter book. If it's the first one and you missed it, I apologize. 6 years old, then 6. Wow. I do like Chicago. I visited a couple of times. I did like it. It was a very nice city to visit. Oh my god. Try. I can't believe I've been almost on here for like 52 minutes. That's crazy. Okay. Let's go with chapter 5 from Chamber of Secrets. Favorite book is Goblet of Fire. It is a good book. Like, I love all the books, don't get me wrong. My favorite is the 3rd one, so I'll be excited to read that chapter. But I do like Goblet of Fire. I'm just gutted in the film they missed out a fair bit, like in the maze and everything. But I still enjoy the film. I think I watched 3, 4, and 5 the most out of all the films. I do watch the first 2 at Christmas. Okay. So, we're going to read chapter 5, The Whomping Willow. Big bad tree. The end of the summer holidays came too quickly for Harry's liking. He was looking forward to getting back to Hogwarts, but his month at the Burrow had been the happiest in his life. It was difficult not to feel jealous of Ron when he thought of the Dursleys and the sort of welcome he could expect next time he turned up at Privet Drive. Going to see Pio in the cinema, celebrate back to Hogwarts Day with my friend. That's really cool. Sorry to interrupt, guys. I seen Prisoner of Azkaban on the 20th anniversary in my local cinema. I saw it for the 20th anniversary. It was so cool seeing it in theaters again. It was so fun. I noticed bits I never noticed before as well. It's always fun. On the last evening, Miss Weasley conjured up a sumptuous dinner, which included all of Harry's favourite things, ending with a mouth-watering treacle pudding. Fred and George rounded off the evening with a display of Filibuster's fireworks. They filled the kitchen with red and blue stars that bounced from ceiling to wall for at least half an hour. Then it was time for a last mug of hot chocolate and bed. It took a long while to get started the next morning. They were up at the cockcrow, but somehow they still seemed to have a great deal to do. Miss Weasley dashed about in a bad mood, looking for spare socks and quills. People kept colliding on the stairs, half dressed with bits of toast in their hands, and Mr. Weasley nearly broke his neck, tripping over a stray chicken as he crossed the yard, carrying Ginny's trunk to the car. Harry couldn't see how 8 people, 6 large trunks, 2 owls, and a rat were going to fit into one small Ford Anglia. He had reckoned, of course, without the special features which Mr. Weasley had added to it. Not a word to Molly, he whispered to Harry as he opened the boot and showed him how it had been magically expanded so that the trunks fitted easily. When at last they were all in the car, Miss Weasley glanced into the back seat where Harry, Ron, Fred, George, and Percy were all sitting comfortably side by side and said, "Muggles do know more than we give them credit for, don't they?" she said as she and Ginny got into the front seat, which had been stretched so that it resembled a park bench. "I mean, you never know it was this roomy from the outside, would you?" Mr. Weasley started up the engine and they trundled out of the yard, Harry turning back for one last look at the house. He barely had time to wonder when he'd see it again when they were back. George had forgotten his box of filibuster fireworks. 5 minutes after that, they skidded to a halt in the yard so that Fred could run in for his broomstick. He'd almost reached the motorway when Ginny shrieked that she'd left her diary. By the time she'd clambered back into the car, they were running very late, and tempers were running high. Mr. Weasley glanced at his watch and then at his wife. "Molly, dear." "No, Arthur." "No one would see. The little button here's an invisibility booster I installed. That'd get us up in the air, and then we fly above the clouds. We'd be there in 10 minutes, and no one would be any the wiser." "I said no, Arthur. Not in broad daylight." They reached King's Cross at 11:15. Mr. Weasley dashed across the road to get trolleys for their trunks, and they all hurried into the station. Harry had caught the Hogwarts Express the previous year. The tricky bit was getting onto platform 9 3/4, which wasn't visible to the Muggle eye. What you had to do was walk straight through the solid barrier dividing platforms 9 and 10. It didn't hurt, but it had to be done carefully so that none of the Muggles noticed you vanishing. "Percy first," said Miss Weasley, looking nervously at the clock overhead, which showed they only had 5 minutes to disappear casually through the barrier. Percy strode briskly forward and vanished. Mr. Weasley went next. Fred and George followed. "I'll take Ginny, and you two come right after us," said Miss Weasley, telling Harry, grabbing Ginny's hand and setting off. In the blink of an eye, they were gone. "Let's go together. We've only got a minute," said Ron to Harry. Harry made sure that Hedwig's cage was safely wedged on top of his trunk and wheeled his trolley about to face the barrier. He felt perfectly confident. This wasn't nearly as uncomfortable as using flu powder. Both of them bent low over the handles of their trolleys and walked purposely towards the barrier, gathering speed. A few feet away from it, they broke into a run. And crash! Both trolleys hit the barrier and bounced backwards. Ron's trunk fell off with a loud thump. Harry was knocked off his feet, and Hedwig's cage bounding onto the shiny floor as she rolled away, shrieking indignantly. People all around them stared, and a guard nearby yelled, "What in blazes do you think you're doing?" "Lost control of the trolley," gasped Harry, clutching his ribs as he got up. Ron ran to pick up Hedwig, who was causing such a scene there was a lot of murmuring about cruelty to animals from the surrounding crowd. "Why can't we get through?" Harry hissed to Ron. "I don't know." Ron looked wildly around. A dozen curious people were still watching them. "We're going to miss the train," whispered Ron. "I don't understand why the gateway sealed itself." Harry looked up at the giant clock with a sickening feeling in the pit of his stomach. 10 seconds. 9 seconds. He wheeled his trolley forward cautiously until it was right against the barrier and pushed with all his might. The metal remained solid. 3 seconds. 2 seconds. 1 second. "It's gone," said Ron, sounding stunned. "The train's left. What if Mum and Dad can't get back through to us? Have you got any Muggle money?" Harry gave a hollow laugh. "The Dursleys haven't given me pocket money for about 6 years. Ron pressed his ear to the cold barrier. "Can't hear a thing," he said tensely. "What are we going to do? I don't know how long it'll take Mum and Dad to get back to us." They looked around. People were still watching them, mainly because of Hedwig's continuous shrieks. "I think we better go wait by the car," said Harry. "We're attracting too much attention." "Harry," said Ron, his eyes gleaming. "The car." "What about it?" "We can fly the car to Hogwarts." "But I thought we're stuck, right? We've got to get to school, haven't we? And even underage wizards are allowed to use magic if it's a real emergency. Section 19 or something of the restriction of thingy." Harry's feeling of panic turned suddenly to excitement. Can you fly it? No problem, said Ron, wheeling his trolley round to face the exit. Come on, let's go. If we hurry, we'll be able to follow the Hogwarts Express. And they marched off through the crowd of curious muggles, out of the station, and into the side of the road where the old Ford Anglia was parked. Ron unlocked the carnivorous boot with a series of taps from his wand. They heaved their trunks back in, put Hedwig on the back seat, and got into the front. Check no one's watching, said Ron, starting the ignition with another tap of his wand. Harry stuck his head out the window. Traffic was rumbling along the main road ahead, but their street was empty. Okay, he said. Ron pressed a tiny silver button on the dashboard. The car around them vanished. And so did they. Harry could feel the seat vibrating beneath him, hear the engine, feel his hands on his knees and his glasses on his nose. But for all he could see, he had become a pair of eyeballs, floating a few feet above the ground in a dingy little street full of packed cars. Let's go, said Ron's voice from his right. The ground and the dirty buildings on either side fell away, dropping out of sight as the car rose. In seconds, the whole of London lay smoky and glittering below them. Then there was a popping noise, and the car, Ron and Harry, reappeared. Uh-oh, said Ron, jabbing the invisibility booster. It's faulty. Both of them pummeled it. The car vanished, then it flickered back again. Hold on, Ron yelled. He slammed his foot on the accelerator. They shot straight into the low, woolly clouds, and everything turned dull and foggy. They explored the house elf magic more. It seemed extremely powerful. It's taking a break from the book a second, guys, to read a comment, sorry. Yeah, I think the idea of it, like, they explore it in Hogwarts Legacy a lot, like how elves are probably more powerful than wizards, and that's why they're not allowed to have a wand. Yeah, I think even when you see Dobby, you're like, how is he that powerful? Because he can stop them getting through a barrier. He can do so much stuff. And you're like, are they just as powerful as wizards or more? Yeah, I do agree. I wish they might explore it if the TV show goes ahead. They might explore it in there, which would be interesting. Now what? Said Harry, blinking at solid mass of clouds pressing in on them from all sides. We need to see the train to know what direction to go in, said Ron. Dip back down again, quickly. They dropped back beneath the clouds and twisted around in their seats, squinting at the ground. I can see it, Harry yelled. Right ahead, there! The Hogwarts Express was streaking along below them like a scarlet snake. Due north, said Ron, checking the compass on the dashboard. Okay, we'll just have to check on it every half an hour or so. Hold on! And they shot up through the clouds. A minute later, they burst out into a blaze of sunlight. It was a different world. The wheels of the car skimmed the sea of fluffy clouds, the sky a bright and endless blue under the blinding white sun. All we've got to do now is worry about airplanes, said Ron. They looked at each other and started to laugh. For a long time, they couldn't stop. It was as though they'd been plunged into a fabulous dream. This, thought Harry, was surely the only way to travel. Past swirls and turrets of snowy clouds and a car full of hot, bright sunlight, with a fat pack of toffees in the glove compartment, and the prospect of seeing Fred and George's jealous faces when they landed smoothly and spectacularly on the sweeping lawn of Hogwarts Castle. They made regular checks on the train as they flew further and further north, each dip beneath the clouds showing them a different view. London was so far behind them, replaced by neat green fields which gave way into wide purplish moors, villages with tiny toy churches, and a great city alive with cars like multicoloured ants. Several uneventful hours later, however, Harry had to admit that some of the fun was wearing off. The toffees had made them extremely thirsty, and they had nothing to drink. He and Ron had pulled off their jumpers, but Harry's t-shirt was sticking to the back of his seat, and his glasses were sliding down to the end of his sweaty nose. He had stopped noticing the fantastic cloud shapes now, and was thinking longingly of the train miles below, where you could buy ice-cold pumpkin juice from a trolley pushed by a plump witch. Why hadn't they been able to get onto platform 9 3/4? Can't be much further, can it? Croaked Ron, hours later still, as the sun started to sink into the floor of the clouds, staining in a deep pink. Ready for another check on the train? It was still right below them, winding its way past a snowy-capped mountain. It was much darker beneath the canopy of clouds. Ron put his foot on the accelerator and drove them upwards again, but as he did so, the engine began to whine. Harry and Ron exchanged nervous glances. It's probably just tired, said Ron. It's never been this far before. And they both pretended not to notice the whining growing louder and louder as the sky became steadily darker. Stars were blossoming in the blackness. Harry pulled his jumper back on, trying to ignore the way the windscreen wipers were now waving feebly, as though in protest. Not far, said Ron, more to the car than to Harry. Not far now. And he patted the dashboard nervously. When they flew back beneath the clouds a little while later, they had to squint through the darkness for a landmark they knew. There! Harry shouted, making Ron and Hedwig jump. Straight ahead! Silhouetted on the dark horizon, high on the cliff over the lake, stood the many turrets and towers of Hogwarts Castle. But the car began to shudder and was losing speed. Come on, said Ron, giving the steering wheel a little shake. Nearly there! Come on! The engine groaned. Narrow jets of steam were issuing from underneath the bonnet. Harry found himself gripping the edges of his seat very hard as they flew towards the lake. The car gave a nasty wobble. Glancing out his window, Harry saw the smooth, black, glassy surface of the water, a mile below. Ron's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. The car wobbled again. Come on, Ron muttered. They were over the lake. The castle was right ahead. Ron put his foot down. There was a loud clunk, a splutter, and the engine died completely. Uh-oh, said Ron into the silence. The noise of the car dropped. They were falling, gathering speed, heading straight for solid castle wall. No! Ron yelled, swinging the steering wheel around. They missed the dark stone wall by inches, and the car turned into a great arc, soaring over the dark greenhouses, then the vegetable plots, and then out onto the black lawns, losing height all the time. Ron let go of the steering wheel completely and pulled his wand out of his back pocket. Stop! Stop! He yelled, whacking the dashboard and the windscreen. They were still plummeting, the ground flying closer to them. Mind that tree! Harry bellowed, lunging for the steering wheel. But it was too late. Crunch! With an ear-splitting bang of metal on wood, they hit the thick tree trunk and dropped to the ground with a heavy jolt. Steam was billowing from underneath the crumpled bonnet. Hedwig was shrieking in terror. A golf ball-sized lump was throbbing on Harry's head where he'd hit the windscreen, and to his right, Ron let out a low, depressing groan. You okay? Harry said urgently. My wand, said Ron in a shaky voice. Look at my wand. It had snapped, almost in two. The tip was dangling limply, held only by a few splinters. Harry opened his mouth to say he was sure they'd be able to mend it at the school, but never got started. At that very moment, something hit his side of the car with the force of a charging bull, sending him lurching sideways into Ron, just as the equally heavy blow hit the roof. What's happened? Ron gasped, staring through the windscreen, and Harry looked around just in time to see a branch as thick as a python smash into it. The tree they'd hit was attacking them. Its trunk was bent almost double, and its gnarled boughs were pummeling every inch of the car it could reach. Ah! Said Ron, as another twisted limb punched a large dent in his door. The windscreen was now trembling under a hail of blows from knuckle-like twigs, and a branch as thick as a battering ram were pounding furiously on the roof, which seemed to be caving in. Run for it! Ron shouted, throwing his full weight against his door. But the next second he'd been knocked backwards into Harry's lap by a ferocious uppercut from another branch. We're done for, he moaned, as the ceiling sagged, but suddenly the floor of the car was vibrating. The engine restarted. Reverse! Harry yelled, and the car shot backwards. The tree was still trying to hit them. They could hear its roots creaking as it almost ripped itself up, lashing out at them as it sped out of reach. That, Ron panted, was close. Well done, car. The car, however, had reached the end of its tether. With two smart clunks, the door flew open, and Harry felt his seat tip sideways. Next thing he knew, he sprawled out on the damp ground. Loud thuds told him that the car was ejecting their luggage from the boot. Hedwig's cage flew through the air and burst open. She rose out of it with a loud, angry screech and sped off towards the castle without a backwards look. Then, dented, scratched, and steaming, the car rumbled off into the darkness, its rear lights blazing angrily. Come back! Ron yelled after it, brandishing his broken wand. Dad'll kill me! Can you believe our luck? Said Ron miserably, bending down to pick up Scabbers, the rat. Of course, all trees we could hit. We hit the one that hits back. He glanced over his shoulder at the ancient tree, which was still flailing its branches threateningly. Come on, said Harry wearily. We better get up to the school. It wasn't all the triumphant arrival they'd pictured. Stiff, cold, and bruised, they seized the ends of their trunks and began dragging them up the greasy slope towards the great oak front doors. I think the feast's already started, said Ron, dropping his trunk at the foot of the front steps and crossing quietly, looking through the brightly lit window. "Hey, Harry, come and look, it's the sorting." Harry hurried over, and together he and Ron peered in at the great hall. Candles were hovering in midair over four long, crowded tables, making the gold plates and goblets sparkle. Overhead, the bewitching ceiling was always mirrored in the sky outside, sparkling with stars. Though the forest of pointed black Hogwarts hats, Harry saw a long line of scared-looking first-years filling into the hall. Ginny was among them, easily visible because of her vivid Weasley hair. Meanwhile, Professor McGonagall, a bespectacled witch with her hair in a tight bun, was placing the famous Hogwarts sorting hat on a stool before the newcomers. Every year, this age-old hat, patched, frayed, and dirty, sorted new students into their four Hogwarts houses: Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin. Harry well remembered putting it on exactly 1 year ago and waiting, petrified for its decision, as it muttered aloud in his ear. For a few horrible seconds, he feared the hat was going to put him in Slytherin House, which had turned out more dark witches and wizards than any other. But he'd ended up in Gryffindor, along with Ron, Hermione, and the rest of the Weasleys. Last term, Harry and Ron helped Gryffindor win the House Championship, beating Slytherin for the first time in 7 years. A very small mousy-haired boy had been called forward to place the hat on his head. Harry's eyes wandered past him to where Professor Dumbledore, the headmaster, sat, watching the sorting from the staff table, his long silver beard and half-moon glasses shining brightly in the candlelight. Several seats along, Harry saw Gilderoy Lockhart, dressed in robes of aquamarine. And there, at the end, was Hagrid, huge and hairy, drinking deeply from his goblet. "Hang on," Harry muttered to Ron. "There's an empty chair at the staff table. Where's Snape?" Professor Severus Snape was Harry's least favourite teacher. Harry also happened to be Severus Snape's least favourite student. Cruel, sarcastic, and disliked by everyone except the students from his own house, Slytherin. Snape taught potions. "Maybe he's ill," said Ron hopefully. "Maybe he left," said Harry, "because he missed out on the Defence Against the Dark Arts job again. Or maybe he might have been sacked," said Ron enthusiastically. "I mean, everyone hates him." "Or maybe," said a very cold voice right behind them, "he's waiting to hear why you two didn't arrive on the school train." Harry spun round. There, his black robes rippling in a cold breeze, stood Severus Snape. He was a thin man with swallow skin, a hook nose, and greasy shoulder-length black hair, and at this moment he was smiling in a way that told Harry he and Ron were in very big trouble. "Follow me," said Snape. Not daring even to look at each other, Harry and Ron followed Snape up the steps into the vast, echoing entrance hall, which was lit with flaming torches. A delicious smell of food was wafting from the great hall, but Snape led them away from the warmth and light, down a narrow stone staircase that led into the dungeons. "In," he said, opening a door halfway down the cold passageway and pointing. They entered Severus Snape's office, shivering. The shadowy walls were lined with shelves of large glass jars in which floated all manner of revolting things Harry did not really want to know the name of at the moment. The fireplace was dark and empty. Snape closed the door and turned to look at them. "So," he said softly, "train isn't good enough for the famous Harry Potter and his faithful sidekick Weasley. Wanted to arrive with a bang, did we, boys?" "No, sir. It was the barrier at King's Cross. Silence," Snape said coldly. "What have you done with the car?" Ron gulped. This wasn't the first time Snape had given Harry the impression of being able to read minds. But a moment later, he understood as Snape unrolled today's issue of the Evening Prophet. "You were seen," he hissed, showing them the headline. "Flying Ford Anglia mystifies Muggles." He began to read aloud. "Two Muggles in London, convinced they saw an old car flying over the post office tower. At noon in Norfolk, Miss Hetty Ballis was hanging out her washing. Mr. Angus Fleet of Peebles reported to police. 6 or 7 Muggles in all. I believe your father works in the misuse of Muggle artifacts office," he said, looking up at Ron, smiling still more nastily. Dear, dear, his own son. Harry felt as though he'd just been walloped in the stomach by one of the mad tree's larger branches. If anyone found out Mr. Weasley had bewitched the car, he hadn't thought of that. "I noticed in my search of the park that considerable damage seems to have been done to a very vulnerable Whomping Willow," Snape went on. "That tree did more damage to us than we—" Ron blurted out. "Silence!" snapped Snape again. "Most unfortunately, you are not in my house." and the decision to expel you does not rest with me. I shall go and fetch the people who do have that happy power. You will wait here." Ron and Harry stared at each other, white-faced. Harry didn't feel hungry anymore. Now he felt extremely sick. He tried not to look at a large, slimy something suspended in green liquid on the shelf behind Snape's desk. If Snape had gone to fetch Professor McGonagall, head of Gryffindor House, they were hardly any better off. She might be fairer than Snape, but she was still extremely strict. 10 minutes later, Snape returned, and sure enough, it was Professor McGonagall who accompanied him. Harry had seen Professor McGonagall angry on several occasions, but either he had forgotten just how thin her mouth could go, or he had never seen her this angry before. She raised her wand the moment she entered. Harry and Ron both flinched, but she merely pointed it at the empty fireplace, where flames suddenly erupted. "Sit," she said, and they both backed into the chairs by the fire. Ron launched into the story, starting with the barrier at the station, refusing to let them through. "So you have no choice, Professor. We couldn't get on the train. Why didn't you send us a letter by owl? I believe you have an owl," Professor McGonagall said coldly to Harry. Harry gaped at her. Now she said it. That seemed the obvious thing to do. "I didn't think that," said Professor McGonagall, "is obvious." There was a knock on the office door, and Snape, now looking happier than ever, opened it. There stood the headmaster, Professor Dumbledore. Harry's whole body went numb. Dumbledore was looking unusually grave. He stared down his very crooked nose at them, and Harry suddenly found himself wishing he and Ron were still being beaten up by the Whomping Willow. There was a long silence. Then Dumbledore said, "Please explain why you did this." It would have been better if he had shouted. Harry hated the disappointment in his voice. For some strange reason, he was unable to look Dumbledore in the eyes, and spoke instead to his niece. He told Dumbledore everything except that Mr. Weasley owned the bewitched car, making it sound as though he and Ron just happened to find a flying car parked outside the station. He knew Dumbledore would see through this at once, but Dumbledore asked no questions about the car. When Harry finished, he merely continued to peer at them through his spectacles. "We'll go and get our stuff," said Ron in a hopeless sort of voice. "What are you talking about, Mr. Weasley?" barked Professor McGonagall. "You're going to expel us, aren't you?" said Ron. Harry looked quickly at Dumbledore. "Not today, Mr. Weasley," said Dumbledore. "But I must impress on both of you the seriousness of what you've done. I'll be writing to your families tonight. I must also warn you that if you do anything like this again, I'll have no choice but to expel you." Snape looked as though Christmas had been cancelled. He cleared his throat and said, "Professor Dumbledore, these boys have flouted the decree for the restriction of underage wizardry, caused serious damage to an old and vulnerable tree. Surely acts of this nature will be for Professor McGonagall to decide of these boys. Punishment, Severus," said Dumbledore calmly. "They are in her house, and are therefore her responsibility." He turned to Professor McGonagall. "I must go back to the feast, Minerva. I've got to give a few notices. Come on, Severus. There's a delicious-looking custard tart I want to sample." Snape shot a look of pure venom at Harry and Ron as he allowed himself to be swept out of his office, leaving them alone with Professor McGonagall, who was still eyeing them like a wrathful eagle. "You'd better get along to the hospital, Wing Weasley. You're bleeding." "Not much," said Ron, hastily wiping the cut over his eye with his sleeve. "Professor, I wanted to watch my sister get sorted." "The sorting ceremony is over," said Professor McGonagall. "Your sister's also in Gryffindor." "Oh, good," said Ron. "And speaking of Gryffindor," Professor McGonagall said sharply, but Harry cut in. "Professor, when we took the car, term hadn't started, so Gryffindor really shouldn't have any points taken from it, should it?" He finished, watching her anxiously. Professor McGonagall gave him a piercing look, but he was sure she'd almost smiled. Her mouth looked less thin, anyway. "I will not be taking any points from Gryffindor," she said, and Harry's heart lightened considerably. "But you will both get a detention." It was better than Harry had expected. As for Dumbledore's writing to the Dursleys, that was nothing. Harry knew perfectly well they'd just be disappointed that the Whomping Willow hadn't squashed him flat. Professor McGonagall raised her wand again and pointed it at Snape's desk. A large plate of sandwiches, 2 silver goblets, and a jug of iced pumpkin juice appeared with a pop. "You'll eat here, and then go straight to your dormitories," she said. "I must return to the feast." When the door had closed behind her, Ron let out a long whistle. "I thought we had it," he said, grabbing a sandwich. "So did I," said Harry, taking one too. Can you believe our luck, though? Ron said thickly through a mouthful of chicken and ham. Fred and George must have flown that car 4 or 6 times and no muggle ever saw them. He swallowed and took another huge bite. Why couldn't we get through the barrier? Harry shrugged. We'll have to watch our step from now on, though, he said, taking a grateful swig of pumpkin juice. Wish we could have gone to the feast. She didn't want us showing off, said Ron sagely. Doesn't want people to think it's clever arriving by flying car. When they had eaten as many sandwiches as they could, the plate kept refilling itself. They rose and left the office, treading the familiar path to Gryffindor Tower. The castle was quiet. It seemed that the feast was over. They walked past muttering portraits and creaking suits of armour and climbed narrow flights of stone stairs until at last they reached the passage where the secret entrance to Gryffindor Tower was hidden, behind an oil painting of a very fat woman in a pink silk dress. Password? She said as they approached. Harry said. They didn't know the New Year's passwords, not having met a Gryffindor prefect yet, but help came along almost immediately. They heard the hurried feet behind them and turned to see Hermione dashing towards them. There you are! Where have you been? The most ridiculous rumours. Someone said you'd been expelled for crashing a flying car. Well, we haven't been expelled, Harry assured her. You're not telling me you did fly here, said Hermione, sounding almost as severe as Professor McGonagall. Skip the lecture, said Ron impatiently, and tell us the new password. It's Wattlebird, said Hermione impatiently, but that's not the point. Her words were cut short, however, as the portrait of the fat lady swung open, and there was a sudden storm of clapping. It looked as though the whole of Gryffindor House was still awake, packed into the circular common room, standing on the lopsided tables and squashy armchairs, waiting for them to arrive. Arms reached through the portrait hole to pull Harry and Ron inside, leaving Hermione to scramble in after them. Brilliant, said Lee Jordan. Inspired. What an entrance. Flying a car right into the Whomping Willow. People will be talking about this one for years. Good on you, said a fifth year Harry had never spoken to. Someone was patting him on the back as though he'd just won a marathon. Fred and George pushed their way to the front of the crowd and said together, Why couldn't you call us back, eh? Ron was scarlet in the face, grinning embarrassingly, but Harry could see one person who didn't look happy at all. Percy was visible over the heads of some of the excited first years, and he seemed to be trying to get near enough to start telling them off. Harry nudged Ron in the ribs and nodded in Percy's direction. Ron got the point at once. Got to get upstairs. Bit tired, he said, and the two of them started pushing their way towards the door on the other side of the room, which led to the spiral staircases and the dormitories. Night, Harry called back to Hermione, who was wearing a scowl just like Percy's. They managed to get to the other side of the common room, still having their backs slapped, and gained the piece of the staircase. They hurried up it, right to the top, and at last reached the door of their old dormitory, which now had a sign on it saying, Second Years. They entered the familiar circular room with its 5 four-posters hung with red velvet and its high, narrow windows. Their trunks had been brought up for them and placed at the end of their beds. Ron grinned guiltily at Harry. I know I shouldn't enjoy that or anything, but... The dormitory door flew open, and in came the other second-year Gryffindor boys, Seamus Finnegan, Dean Thomas, and Neville Longbottom. Unbelievable, beamed Seamus. Cool, said Dean. Amazing, said Neville, awestruck. Harry couldn't help it. He grinned too. And that was the chapter from Chamber of Secrets. I'm going to now end this stream, take a quick 10-minute break to get a drink and things, and I will be back with books 3 and 4 in case you are watching this and you've not seen me read the first one. Obviously, when this live ends, it will be available on my channel for you to come back and watch whenever you would like to. I want to thank you guys all for watching this first part, and if you can make it back, that's great. If not, you can come back later. I will see you guys in about 10 minutes. Bye.